But fate, in its sly old way, had one more trick up its sleeve for him. Just then, strolling by, was the silver merchant, all spiffed up in his fine get-up, with a shiny belt and a walk like a feller who's plumb sure of his trade. And trailing along was Don Laureano, his father-in-law. Don Aurelio Zamudio de la Llave was the sort of man you could stare at from sun-up to sundown and never get the full measure of him. He weren't no giant in stature, but his presence filled up the air like a thunderhead. He allus wore them fancy silk duds cut just so, in a manner that showed he was one of them high-born folks who don't bother proving nothin', 'cause the whole dad-blamed world already knows who he is. He had a quiet, easy grace about him, a kind of nobleness that you felt in your bones more'n you saw with your eyes. His face was lean and sharp, carved out by other folks' troubles, never his own. Them eyes of his, two dark little almonds, hardly ever looked a body square in the face, but when they did, they let on that he knowed a heap more'n what was being said. Every now and again, when the light hit 'em just right, them eyes looked like old silver, buffed up by time and a passel of tales. He didn't smile much, but when he did, every wrinkle fell into place like it was meant to be there. It was a comforting smile, 2 pegs above honest and 2 below dangerous, all mixed up together. Don Aurelio hailed from one of them old Veracruz families, the kind that never hollers or takes up arms, but raises up governments and lets other folks do the fightin'. Folks said it was better to lose your daughter than to lose Don Aurelio's money, and yet nobody spoke bad of him, not 'cause they was scared, but 'cause everybody owed him something, a favor, a wad of cash, or a political leg up. He sauntered down the street with the same care a jeweler takes rollin' a handful of diamonds twixt his fingers. He warn't never in a rush, not for business and not for secrets. He was a feller well schooled in the ways of the world, a slick operator who stayed clean as a whistle. He managed to be around without poking in, warm without being chummy, and trustworthy without letting on his weak spots. Back of that perfect calm was a mind that ticked like one of them fancy Swiss watches, cold, exact, and bound to happen. Nobody knowed just how far his political strings stretched, but word was, in all of Veracruz, there warn't a seat of power he hadn't shined up, one way or t'other, with his silver. And them that tried turning their backs on him found out the world was a sight smaller than they reckoned. Don Aurelio didn't threaten. He didn't holler. He didn't bust down doors. He knowed who would swing 'em open, when, and with what look on their mug. He was a fine gentleman with a touch of mystery, a man born to lead without seeming to. Don Aurelio Zamudio de la Llave was living proof that real power ain't never seen. It's felt. Don Laureano hustled over to the feller sprawled on the pavement, and right behind him come his daughter. "Berrios?" Don Laureano asked, plumb astonished. "Sergeant Berrios, that you?" the old man throwed in. Then, together, they hauled up from the dust a man who was scared half to death, sweating buckets, and plumb desperate. Berrios blinked like an owl in daylight, scarce believing his own eyes. 2 miracles in one day? It had to be a sign from heaven above. Couldn't be nothing else. After they hugged it out, Berrios spilled the whole kit and caboodle in one big breath. The 2 German women, the horses, their sudden showing up in the plaza, the guards turning 'em away, and the kicks he'd took. The silver merchant stood stock still for a spell, his eyes shining like the coins he cottoned to so much. 2 yellow-haired foreign gals, coming from the Injuns. In the next tick, a quick reckoning flashed through his head. Profit, pull, political edge, a rare chance, a gold nugget dropping from the sky right into the Santa Fe dust. "Gentlemen, foller me, right now." and off they went. Don Esteban took 'em into a cool room where the sun sifted through the shutters in big ol' stripes. He listened to Berrios' yarn without so much as a flutter. Armijo had to be fetched here, but on the sly. Elsewise, the folks, still boilin' mad over the killin's from the Injun War, would have tore him to pieces alive. So he sent a quiet invite, a letter without no fancy seal, handed off by a trusty hand. And when the governor showed up incognito, wrapped in a plain cloak with his face hid under a dusty hat, the jawin' commenced. Don Aurelio jumped right in, like a man who likes countin' his money without dawdlin'. "Excellency, peace with the Injuns could pay off handsome, mighty handsome." "Peace? With them savages?" Armijo growled, but it weren't heartfelt. "These savages," Don Esteban put in easy-like, "might sign a treaty. And these two women know names, folks. Chiefs," the silver merchant added. "They know the path to their hearts," Don Laureano chipped in. Armijo mellowed out. He was desperate for cash and a political rope to grab. The merchant then laid out the deal of a lifetime, a fat loan of 15,000 reales de plata, enough to fund a peace outfit and cover all the fixin's. The interest was more'n fair, 18% a year. Fair enough to make Armijo bite and to pad Don Aurelio's pockets a mite thicker'n they already was. So the governor found himself staring at a piece of paper that read as followed.
Contrato de préstamo y obligación. En la villa de Santa Fe de Nuevo México, a los 15 días del mes de noviembre del año del Señor de 1840, ante mí, don Rafael de Arellano, escribano público y de gobierno en esta jurisdicción, comparecen por una parte.
Well now, there come a few lines about that there just
justa y moderada del 8%.
interest, and the government's solemn promise to pay back the whole kit and caboodle.
Y en término de un año improrrogable.
Next off, naturally, was the guarantees. The tithe on all that trading and the taxes from the Chihuahua Trail. Why, them signatures looked a heap more weighty than the old paper they was scratched on. Course, not a blame thing in that contract had a lick of truth to it. The real sum was just 15,000 reals, but they gone and writ down 22,000 in them documents, and the interest rate twixt gentlemen was a whopping 18%, not that puny 8% they put on paper. But twixt fellers like Zamudio and Armijo, a word shook on was solider'n any wax seal you ever seen. Armijo took it, but with one hitch. "Don Esteban, you got to sign that peace treaty for the government." Then he leaned in close and whispered in his ear, "You make do with 8,000 reals and sign the peace with them Apaches." "A fair deal," Don Esteban hollered out, with a smile so sly you could scarce spy it. Then Don Esteban hollered over Berrios to his side, "You're coming with me." "Me? You're taking me?" the sergeant piped up, his voice sounding like a young'un who'd just got the shiniest toy in the world. "You seen them women. You're to find 'em." And so, with his heart plumb full of hope and his belly still rumbling empty as a drum, Berrios stepped out once more into the dusty whirl of the Santa Fe market, trailing after Don Esteban. They was bound and determined to hunt down them two German gals amongst the stalls, the twisty alleys, the stables, and the inns. Santa Fe was a mighty sprawlin' place, but luck, at long last, had turned her smilin' face on Sergeant Berrios.